So I know that in a lot of my content, I make jokes about how bad survival games and its player base is. And while they still are jokes, they are kind of based around my and the community's experiences with the Hive survival games mode. I really don't think the game mode's in a good state right now, but in this video, I'm going to talk about what's wrong with it and how it could be fixed and revived. Also, if you could help me out by making sure that you're subscribed to me, that would be much appreciated. At the time of recording this, less than half the people who watch my videos are subscribed. If you could help me change that, it would be much appreciated. Now, enjoy this video. So just a disclaimer, this video is supposed to be constructive criticism. I'm going to lay it all out on the table and say exactly what I think is wrong with the game mode. However, I'm also going to give my suggestions as to what would help with the game mode as well and possibly help revive it. Because at this point, the game mode is pretty dead. At off hours, it sometimes takes a few minutes to fill a game of survival games, and even at peak hours, survival games usually only still has about a third of the amount of players that Sky Wars or Treasure Wars have, which are the other two popular PvP modes on the Hive. I think this shows an obvious problem with Hive survival games, especially since the Battle Royale craze has never really died down in the world of video games in the past few years. It's still most definitely there, and one would think that people would still want to play Battle Royales, especially in Minecraft. I know there is the counter argument that survival games has been out since the creation of Minecraft servers, basically. But I feel like the Hive could take some inspiration from popular Battle Royales right now, or even just other survival games game modes on Minecraft, and add some of those components into their own game. Now, I wouldn't go full LBSG Battle Royale on it because that isn't even survival games anymore, but adding some things similar to CubeCraft, like a shrinking zone or compasses to help find players, would be really useful in survival games on the Hive. One of my biggest complaints about Hive survival games currently is the fact that the further you go in survival games, the more it just becomes running simulator and just trying to find people. You're not really doing anything other than running around and hoping that you might cross paths with another player that you can fight. Like I said, stuff that would combat this is a player tracker, for example. It just leads you to the closest player, and you can get fights a lot quicker because you just know where exactly to go. Another thing that could be added is something like the Fortnite Storm or PUBG Blue Zone. Basically just something that forces people to a certain point on the map so that they'll fight quicker. Otherwise, you will, and do in fact have on the Hive survival games, people that just camp in the corners of maps to try and make it to Deathmatch easier. I'm not saying that this won't happen if there is a zone added, but I think it'll give people higher chances of fighting, and as a result, make Deathmatches more skilled because all the better players are in Deathmatch. Because at this point, it's usually just you and one other person that's decent at the game in Deathmatch, and the rest of the people have just been camping the entire time, don't even have good gear, and are just kind of hoping to get Deathmatch, and maybe you can clean up a fight in Deathmatch to win. Not a fun way to play the game for the people that were camping for obvious reasons, and also for the people who were actually actively going around and taking fights because Deathmatch just becomes super easy. That's not to say that survival games isn't super easy in the first place, because it most definitely is. I think this is a result of multiple things, the most prominent one being boredom. There hasn't been any new content or updates or anything in survival games in a while. The people who have more playtime in survival games and generally tend to be more experienced and better at the game stop playing because there's nothing to do in survival games and they've seen it all. This in turn makes the PvP worse because it's now just new players who don't really know what they're doing, and it just becomes a cycle that repeats itself. New players get good at the game and they've seen it all and there's nothing else to do and they just leave. And I feel like this could be alleviated just by adding new content, new rewards, new levels and everything, and also some of the gameplay changes like the zone or tracking compasses would make it a lot more fun to play and would bring in new players. I also talked to Pizzas, a Hive helper, on my stream the other night, and he also has some input about what could be changed on Hive survival games to make it more fun.
They could add new levels, new maps, squads.
I feel like we'd need bigger maps for that, though.
That's true. They'd have to have different maps for different. They could do a mega.
That would be.
I don't know if it would fill a lot, but try.
Now, Pizzas is right that getting bigger games to fill would probably be an issue, but I feel like that could also just be solved by a Hive taking a chance and adding it, just because it's new content in survival games, and I feel like people would in fact play it, even if there were megas in the games would fill. I do feel like most of these issues stem from the Hive not really wanting to take a chance or initiative to update a game mode that doesn't really have the largest player base. But survival games is the OG Minecraft PvP mode, and I feel like if there was new content on Hive survival games, a large amount of people would actually play Hive survival games because there's new stuff and they want to re-experience the good old days of survival games on Minecraft. It'll take a small update for the game to be revived a little bit, but if they actually implement some changes and put some more thought into survival games and make it more of a fun game to play, I feel like it'll come back for good and it'll be one of the popular game modes on the Hive again. So that's kind of my big speech about the things that can be changed with Hive survival games, but there are also a few more smaller things that I think would just make the game more fun to play, and I'll lay them out here now. Now, I've said this before and I'll keep on saying it, bows on the Hive are broken. They just do way too much damage for what they are. Bows are effective in Treasure Wars and Sky Wars for fighting people that have diamond armor because it does do an absurd amount of damage. However, those stats are just copied and pasted onto survival games bows as well, and as a result, in survival games, bows do way too much damage. Like, I believe even with the max armor you have, which is diamond helmet boots and iron chestplate and legs, it still does a heart and a half or 2 hearts. One of those, either way, it's too much for a single bow shot being able to shoot someone 5 or 6 times and win the fight because of it. Bow and arrow is sort of nerfed in Treasure Wars by making the cost of arrows absurdly high, but in survival games, the stats just need to be changed in general. They do way too much damage, and I don't think adding better gear will really help because it'll just make the melee fights worse. Bow damage in Hive survival games just needs to be lowered, period. Another suggestion I have for the game mode involves supply drops. I really like how survival games on the Hive Java server does it, where basically you can get a personal supply drop out of crates and use them wherever you want to. However, in doing this, it displays the coordinates of where you're dropping it in chat so that other players can come to you. Now, I use supply drops on the Bedrock version of survival games to just find fights because generally that draws people to there because there's a large lightning bolt and generally supply drops have decent loot. I feel like if the Hive were to add personal supply drops, or even just more supply drops spawning in a game, it would increase the amount of fights and would make games go faster, which, like said earlier, is kind of needed so you're not running around the entire time just looking for fights. I feel like you could even remove cash cows if you added more supply drops, just because they don't really do anything and they require the same amount of skill as supply drops, which is just knowing where they spawn. Either way, I hope these criticisms and suggestions make their way to the Hive. I love this game mode to death, and it pains me that no one plays this game mode anymore because it's just become boring and stale. I truly hope that some of these suggestions can be implemented into the game because I feel like they would help revive it some. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'd just like to say to feel free to share this video with Hive people or just other members of the Hive community, because I think if we all rally behind this cause of getting survival games more content, it'll revive the game mode and it'll bring the community closer as a result. I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.